Queer Fire, the George Jackson Brigade, Men Against Sexism, and Gay Struggle Against Prison. This audio zine includes descriptions of rape and uses terms derogatory towards drug users. Introduction. It may seem strange for anarchists who approach struggle from an insurrectional direction to be compiling writings by and about the George Jackson Brigade. If we understand that power is diffuse, that guerrilla warfare is a strategy of desperation and a dead end, and that our goal is the generalization of uncontrollability, then the urban guerrillas of the 1970s appear somewhat distant, somewhat foreign, sometimes admirable in their context, sometimes horrifying and authoritarian to their core. It seems, with most anarchists, there are two dominant ways of viewing these groups: uncritical valorization and outright condemnation. Both of these attitudes reek of ideological thought, and both stifle the intelligence and creativity of revolt. To make martyrs out of urban guerrillas is to be filled with the spirit of Christianity. Rather than to understand the complexities of groups like the Weather Underground, the Red Army faction, the Red Brigades, etc., the fetishist sees only the explosion, the shell casings, the youthful lips spitting fire at the bourgeoisie. In short, struggle is spectacle. By this logic, extremity, economic damage, and militant language trump strategy or the ability of the act to generalize. It does not matter that many of these groups were authoritarian in their organization, practices, and goals. The smoke and fire obscure the state form lying in wait. It's also easy to romanticize these revolutionary figures, separated as we are by time. It's tempting when revolt has taken a turn toward diffuse informality to look to these past groups as more coherent expressions of attack. Revolt now, whether it is due to our strategy or our cowardice, generally takes more subtle forms in the U.S. When we constantly come up against the problem of how exactly we are to spread revolt, the fury of dynamite can seem appealing. And let us not forget, sometimes that fury is the best way to spread revolt. But these groups, in their specialism, could not dynamite the separation between themselves and others. If we look at where so many of these heroes of the guerrilla struggle ended up, college professors, professionals, windbags who condemn any act of property destruction, our romantic feelings take on a sick pallor. These points, the critique of specialization, the condemnation of authoritarian structure, the refusal of martyrdom, should not be confused with the pretentious scoffing of the ideologue. Insurrectionary anarchists, despite their retreat from fixed ideology, sometimes harbor their own moralities. In the minds of many insurrectionists, the guerrilla, rather than being a hero, is a fool. No matter their goals, their ways of organizing, the content of their writings, one need only look at the hatred spewed by some anarchists for the diffuse guerrillas of the FAI or the CCF. In their self-righteousness, these anarchists have replaced critique of the guerrilla form, a valid and necessary critique, with a flattening of reality, a dualism of insurrectionist and guerrilla that in its bitterness cannot see its stupidity. If we avoid the traps set by both the fetishists and the opponents of guerrilla struggle, and if we study the histories of those struggles, we may equip ourselves with more tools, both material and analytical, for our own insurrectional break with the existent. While certainly the new diffuse anarchist guerrilla differs from groups such as the RAF or the Weather Underground, one does find certain similarities with it, and the ELF, Canada's Direct Action, UK's Angry Brigade, and, to some extent, the George Jackson Brigade. The anarchist elements in these latter groups were simply not present in the vanguardism, Marxist-Leninist politics, and authoritarian organizational forms of the former. The George Jackson Brigade is an interesting case, as it contains a sort of dual spirit. The group was made up of both Marxist-Leninist and anarchist members. The brigade's major political statement, "The power of the people is the force of life," even contains a written dialogue between the two groupings, exploring their disagreements on revolutionary strategy. The brigade's diversity extended beyond the political as well. The group consisted of black and white members, gay, straight, and bisexual members, college graduates, and ex-cons. Where groups such as the Weather Underground were by and large coming from upper middle class, brigade members' experiences gave the group a more nuanced view of struggle. The struggle against prison was, from the beginning, central to the brigade's activities, influenced in no small part by the fact that members of the brigade had been in and out of prison their entire lives. The brigade's diversity, I would postulate, also contributed to its differences in tone and content from other U.S. guerrilla groups of the time. The ability to self-reflect, as happened after the brigade's botched bombing of a Safeway store, can often take a back seat to the revolutionary chest-thumping that one reads about in memoirs and histories of groups like the Weather Underground. Gender politics, too, played an integral role in the brigade's political and organizational orientation. Feminist analysis of gender roles and affective labor, and queer analysis of heterosexuality contributed to the group's commitment to gay and women's liberation. While this may seem a minor point to anarchists today, one must look at its context to understand its importance. The other guerrilla groups of the time pushed troubling political lines around gender. Andreas Baader's poisonous misogyny, Mark Rudd's flagrant sexism, the Weather Underground's use of sexual liberation to both pressure women and gay men into heterosexual sex. The examples are endless. So, though one may critique the brigade's strategic or organizational choices, to outright condemn them would mean losing a valuable historical reference point in our own struggle against this world. In the brigade, we find an open dialogue about revolutionary strategy, an ethic of active and antagonistic women's and gay revolt, and a deep commitment to warfare against prison. History cannot be abandoned to the cannibalistic radicals of the universities who see past revolt as career opportunity. As with all things, history can be a whetstone with which we sharpen our daggers for our present war against the civilized order. I hope this publication can contribute in some way to revolt against prison society and to queer antagonistic struggle. The weapons are everywhere. The secret, as always, is to really begin.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me.